Good morning, everyone. We are here to discuss to you about the history and empirical status of key psychoanalytic concepts, namely the unconscious, drives, parent infant relationships, Oedipus complex, defenses, transference, countertransference, resistance, interpretation, and accuracy.
So, what is unconscious? It's a part of our mind that holds thoughts and memories we're unaware of, yet they still affect our behavior. Here are six evidence that illustrate how the unconscious works. Brain studies, experiments show that people can recognize words presented so quickly they aren't aware of them, indicating our brains pick up on hidden information. Unexplainable behaviors, actions often stem from unconscious thoughts or feelings linked to past experiences. Therapy insights. In therapy, people express feelings that reveal hidden issues, as the unconscious brings these to the forefront. Dreams. Strange dreams often reflect our worries or desires, offering clues about our unconscious. Repression. Studies show that repressed feelings can still influence behavior, highlighting the impact of the unconscious. New research, advances in brain science are uncovering more about how the unconscious mind shapes our thoughts and patterns.
Drives or instinctual urges play an important role in determining human development by calling an individual into actions that reduce tension. Recent models of drives centered on the need for pleasure, like sex and hunger, and the instinctual response as a consequence of not satisfying that need, like aggression and control. In a developmental perspective, Kernberg's model states that affects are the most common motivators of behavior, which positively or negatively influences infant caregiver relationships. Furthermore, Schwartz's theory states that affects are also a neurophysiologically based factor, such that the neurologically generated affect evident in motor behavior like facial expressions communicates emotions to others, which develops object relations. For instance, research showed that the nonverbal behavior of parents elicited certain affect in the child, resulting in personality development and defense structure.
The importance of parent-child relationships are emphasized on the influence of early relationships and attachments to one's development. This also suggests early intervention for proper development. Observational data from Freud claimed the emotional and intimate attachment of the male child to the mother, which posits a competitive yet fearful relationship with the father. A shift in focus on what influences human behavior to interpersonal relationship greatly affects concepts in psychology. Therefore, a child's relationship to others shapes their identity and personality. This is also supported by attachment theory, saying people have an internal working model of relationships based on their emotional connections to others and that attachment is necessary for survival. Similarly, a mother's absence can result in altered physiological functioning, and a secure attachment from childhood results in secured adulthood connections.
Sigmund Freud coined the concept of Oedipus complex after observing relationships between parents and their children. He concluded through these observations that children can have either of the following attitudes toward their parents at a certain age. A daughter will be competitive of her mother for her father's affection, while a son will be competitive with his father for his mother's affection. Its definition has since then been broadened to mean two people competing for a third person's affection. There isn't a lot of evidence for this unconscious phenomenon and relies mostly on research about dreams using the core conflictual relationship theme method.
Another psychoanalytic concept that Luborsky and Barrett discussed in their study is the idea of defenses. This concept explains that our minds have built-in defense mechanisms to protect us from anxiety and discomfort. These defenses work by keeping certain thoughts, emotions, or impulses out of our conscious awareness. For example, repression pushes painful memories deep into the unconscious, while denial refuses to acknowledge an uncomfortable truth. Projection, on the other hand, shifts unwanted feelings onto others, such as accusing someone else of being angry when it is in fact you that has heightened emotions. Fantasy provides an escape by reimagining reality, usually in a safer way. Meanwhile, identification involves unconsciously adopting traits of another, sometimes even an aggressor. And intellectualization distances us from emotions by overanalyzing situations logically. Furthermore, Studies show that people tend to rely on these same defense mechanisms over time, and these patterns can even be linked to different mental health conditions.
What is transference? It's when patients unconsciously direct feelings from important past relationships onto their therapist. How do we know it exists? In the therapist observations, therapists often see patients reacting emotionally to them in ways that reflect feelings for important people in their lives. In the research findings, studies show that the way patients interact with their therapists mirrors their interactions with others from their past. Based in the personal stories, interviews reveal how patients describe their feelings toward therapists, showcasing unresolved past issues. In terms of case studies, specific therapy experiences demonstrate how patients relate to therapists as they did with significant figures, like critical parents. Lastly, the therapeutic relationship, the impact of transference can either strengthen or complicate the therapy process, affecting outcomes.
Countertransference pertains to the therapist's response to the patient's transference, which are also influenced by the therapist's personal experiences with significant others. Hence, in its basic form, it is a pattern of miscommunication and should be avoided because the therapist's personal experiences were influencing the treatment of the patient. Although studies are few, recent researches show that countertransference is an essential part of the treatment process as it allows the therapist to recognize and better understand the patient's transference, resulting in better outcomes of the treatment.
Resistance is a behavior in therapy where the rate of progress is blocked or slowed unconsciously or consciously by the patient's avoidance of their feelings. Due to wanting change and unliking emotional discomfort at the same time, the patient may move from progress to resistance from time to time. Resistance can hinder the formation of a strong working alliance, which is crucial for successful therapy. To further study this phenomenon, researchers analyzed therapy scripts. Schuler identified four subtypes: abrupt or shifting, flat or halting, oppositional, and vague or doubting. On the other hand, Mahalik claimed five subtypes of resistance, namely opposition to change, therapist, insight, recollection of material, and expression of painful affect.
Interpretation is a concept wherein a therapist will deduce a causal relationship from the client's statements. It can be effective in bringing awareness to the client's unrecognized patterns of behavior that may affect their interpersonal relationships. The main evidence used for interpretation is the symptom context method, wherein the therapist figures out the symptom and what context it emerges in. Luborsky provided evidence for this in 1996 by applying the symptom context method to 7 cases. They based the result on 8 identified contexts and the psychological and somatic symptoms that followed. Various studies focused on the connection between interpretation and treatment with varying results. Despite this, there is a clear importance on the role of interpretation in psychodynamic treatment.
In therapy, interpretations help clients understand the deeper reasons behind their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. But how do we know if an interpretation is accurate? Simply put, it's accurate if the client resonates with the interpretation, meaning the response, behavior, or symptoms align with what the therapist interprets. When a therapist accurately recognizes a pattern, it can spark moments of deep insight and validation for the client. One way to assess accuracy that was presented in the paper is through the utilization of what we call the core conflictual relationship themes, or CCRT. This is a method that identifies recurring patterns in how people relate to others. This helps therapists make more precise interpretations. At its core, these key psychoanalytic concepts, as well as the concepts in therapy, unravel the complexities of human behavior. Ultimately, by deepening our understanding of the human mind, psychology continues to evolve as a dynamic and ever growing field of science.